Okay, so let's dive into how social media is changing how we talk to each other.
Sounds good.
And get this, our sources for this deep dive are Ielts exam prep materials.
Really?
Yeah, but before you think we're turning this into a study session,
Okay.
we're going to pull out some really interesting insights
Okay.
about how social media has evolved and its impact, all from the expert answers in this material.
Interesting. So it's like we're using these exam materials as a window
Yeah.
into how we think about social media as a society.
Yeah, like a cultural snapshot frozen in time.
I like that.
The first question they tackle is, do you use social media?
Pretty basic.
Yeah, but the source material emphasizes giving specific examples and talking about your personal experiences when you answer.
So it's not just a yes or no.
Right.
You have to show how social media is a part of your life.
Exactly. It's so ingrained now, the question isn't really if you use it.
But how you use it.
Yeah.
It's like asking someone if they use electricity.
Right.
It's more interesting to know what they're powering with it.
I like that analogy.
Instead of just, do you have it?
Exactly. One example they give is someone using Instagram to share their photography
Okay.
and LinkedIn to connect with other professionals.
Yeah, it's not just this one big blob of social media anymore.
Right. It shows how different platforms do different things for us.
Different needs, different parts of our lives,
Exactly.
like LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's become the go-to for professional networking and career stuff.
It's not just social anymore.
Right. It's gone way beyond that.
Which leads perfectly into the next question. What is your favorite social media platform and why?
Okay, getting a little more specific.
And the source material is all about explaining the WHY behind your choice.
Not just naming it.
Right, because just saying a platform doesn't really tell us much.
Yeah, the reasons we prefer certain platforms say a lot about how we interact with this whole digital world.
It's true.
Like, there's an example in the material that highlights LinkedIn as a favorite.
For professional growth, connecting with people in your field, and staying up to date on industry trends.
So it's more than just, I like Facebook, because it's fun.
Way more.
Right. It shows you're really engaged with the platform.
You're using it strategically.
Okay, now get ready, because here comes the big one. Do you think social media has changed the way we communicate?
The million-dollar question.
And the sample answer goes deep into both the pros and cons.
Social media's impact is complicated.
It really is.
It's not just a simple yes or no.
Right. To really understand how it's affecting us, we have to look at the good and the bad.
Both sides.
The source material talks about the obvious good stuff, like instant messaging,
Of course.
sharing photos and videos,
Right.
real-time discussions, all that.
Makes sense.
But then it flips the script and talks about potential downsides,
Oh, like what?
like how our face-to-face interactions might be suffering.
Interesting.
It's like we're trading depth for speed.
Yeah, I see that. It makes you wonder, are we sacrificing those deeper in-person conversations? Just because it's easier to text or post something online.
It's a real concern.
There's actually some research from MIT that's relevant here.
Oh, tell me about it.
They found a link between heavy social media use and people having less empathy.
Wow, that's kind of scary.
It's not that social media is automatically bad,
Right.
but we have to be aware of these potential downsides.
Absolutely. We can't just ignore them.
We can't.
The next question is about how often we use social media.
Okay.
And the source material says, don't just give a time estimate.
Oh, so don't just say 2 hours a day or whatever.
Exactly. They want you to talk about what you actually do on social media.
Like, what are your activities and motivations?
Yeah. It's about being mindful.
I like that, mindful engagement.
One of the examples talks about using social media in the evening to relax and connect,
Okay.
browsing Instagram for creative inspiration, catching up on news articles that friends have shared.
So it's not mindless scrolling. You're using these tools for a reason.
Precisely. It's like choosing to watch a documentary instead of just flipping through channels aimlessly.
Makes sense.
You're being intentional with your time on these platforms.
Absolutely.
But lurking behind all of this is the unavoidable question.
Which is
Do you think people spend too much time on social media?
the big one.
And the source material says back up your answer with solid examples and talk about the consequences.
So no, just saying yes or no. You have to explain why you think that.
Exactly. Back it up with real-world evidence.
Good advice.
One example they give is how too much social media can tank your productivity at work or school.
Ouch. Yeah, been there.
It's not just about wasting time, it can have real consequences.
Sure.
The source material also mentions how it can mess with your sleep and mental health, like making you more anxious.
It's a wake-up call. That social media can be amazing for connecting with people and communicating.
For sure.
But we have to use it responsibly.
We really do.
We've got to set some healthy boundaries for ourselves.
To protect our well-being, right?
Exactly. Think of it this way. Social media is like a buffet.
Okay, I like where this is going.
With tons of delicious dishes.
Okay.
You wouldn't pile everything onto your plate at once, right?
No, I'd pace myself.
You'd choose what looks good, leave room for dessert.
Right.
That's how we need to approach social media.
I love that. Choose what nourishes you, savor the experience.
Don't overindulge.
Don't make yourself sick.
That's the key.
That's such a great analogy. It captures that balance we need to find.
It does.
Okay, so we've covered a lot, starting with how we use social media.
Right.
And then diving into how it might be impacting our communication and even our well-being.
Big topics.
What stands out to you so far?
Well, what really struck me is that social media isn't inherently good or bad.
True.
It's a tool.
Okay.
And like any tool, it depends on how we use it.
Like fire.
Exactly.
It can keep you warm, cook your food.
But it can also burn you if you're not careful.
Exactly. Perfect analogy.
And I think that leads perfectly into our next point.
Oh, I can't wait.
This is where things get really interesting. So the source material actually goes deeper into specific platforms and how we use them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's really helpful for understanding this whole complicated thing.
You're right. It's not just about social media as a whole anymore.
Nope.
The specific platforms we're on and how we use them.
Right.
That paints a much more detailed picture.
It does. And the exam material even encourages looking at it from both sides.
Oh, like the good and the bad.
Exactly. They want test takers to talk about the positive and negative impacts.
Not just black and white.
Right. It's about seeing the shades of gray.
They're kind of promoting critical thinking skills, even in an exam.
Kind of sneaky, right?
I love it. One thing that really hit me was that phrase,
Which one?
reduced quality of face-to-face interactions.
Yeah.
It made me think, have we gotten so used to talking through screens that we've forgotten how to really connect in person?
It's a good question. There's actually a lot of research being done on that right now.
Is there?
Yeah, Sherry Turkle, a professor at MIT.
Okay.
She's done a ton of work on how technology affects human relationships.
Fascinating.
She wrote a book called Reclaiming Conversation.
Okay.
And she argues that being constantly connected,
To our devices.
right, that it's actually making us worse at empathy and having deep conversations.
Wow. That's a little depressing.
It is a little bit. It's like we're trading real human connection.
For convenience.
Yeah, exactly.
But the source material also hints at how to find a good balance.
Okay, like what?
Remember that example about using social media in the evening to relax and be creative?
Yeah.
That suggests we can engage with it mindfully.
Right, it's not all doom and gloom.
Like anything else, moderation is key.
It's true. But it's still a valid concern, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially because the source material talks about the downsides.
Yeah.
Like being less productive, not sleeping well, even feeling more anxious.
It's serious stuff.
There are tons of studies that back this up, too.
Really?
Oh, yeah. For example, there was one published in the Journal of Youth and Adolescence.
Okay.
And they found a connection between using social media and teenagers showing more signs of depression.
Oh, wow.
Again, it's not about demonizing social media.
Right.
It's about being aware of what it can do.
So we can use it responsibly.
Exactly. We need to have a healthy relationship with these platforms.
Right.
Like we would with food or exercise.
It's all about balance.
It is. Speaking of balance, I remember the source material emphasizing something else.
What's that?
How important it is to support your opinions with real examples.
Oh, right. Not just stating your viewpoint.
Yeah, you have to back it up with actual evidence.
That's a good skill to have in general, not just for a test.
It is. We're bombarded with so much information these days.
So overwhelming.
Anyone can make a claim.
Yeah.
But a well-informed opinion needs evidence.
And critical thinking.
Right. It reminds me of that whole filter bubble thing.
Oh, yeah, where algorithms show us what they think we want to see.
Exactly.
Right.
Which can just reinforce our biases.
And keep us from seeing other viewpoints.
It's like we're trapped in an echo chamber.
Which brings us back to what the source material was saying.
About being mindful and thinking critically.
It's all connected.
To really use social media for good,
Yeah.
we need to be aware of its limitations.
Its downside.
And the importance of balancing the good with the bad.
One example that I thought was really cool
Tell me.
was about using social media to network for your career.
Oh, yeah, like building your professional profile.
Exactly. It shows how it can be more than just entertainment.
Right. It can be a powerful tool for achieving your goals.
Absolutely. Think about LinkedIn.
the king of professional networking.
It's totally changed how we connect with potential employers, build relationships in our field.
And stay updated on what's happening in our industry.
It's not just who you know anymore.
Right. It's who knows why you and what they see online.
It's like having a virtual resume and networking event all in one.
Perfect way to put it. That's a prime example of how social media can have positive outcomes.
It all comes back to being intentional.
Using it to your advantage.
I also found it interesting how the source material pushes test takers to go beyond simple answers.
Like yes or no.
Yeah. It wants them to elaborate, give context, support their claims.
That's valuable, not just for exam.
No, for life in general.
It helps us think more deeply.
Yeah.
Express ourselves clearly.
Engage in meaningful conversations.
It's about going beyond the surface.
And really digging into the complexities of whatever we're talking about.
Which in this case
is social media.
The ever-changing world of social media.
You know, we've talked a lot about the negatives.
The downsides.
But what about the incredible creativity social media has sparked?
That's a great point. It's become an incubator for so many different forms of expression.
It has.
Connecting artists, musicians, writers, creators of all kinds.
From all over the world?
Think about platforms like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok.
Yeah.
They've given rise to completely new ways to entertain and express yourself artistically.
It's amazing. Like a global stage
where anyone with a smartphone
can share their talents and connect with an audience.
Social media has made creativity accessible to everyone.
It really has. It's like a digital renaissance.
New forms of art are popping up all the time.
And that creativity goes beyond just art, right?
Absolutely. It's fueled innovation in technology, business, social activism.
It's a platform where ideas are shared.
Collaborations happen.
And movements are born.
It's a catalyst for change.
Giving people the power to come together and make a difference.
That's definitely something worth celebrating, even with all its flaws.
Yeah.
Social media has unleashed this incredible wave of creativity.
Innovation.
That could change the world for the better.
We've talked about the downsides, the addiction, the comparison, the negativity.
Right.
But what about the positive impact on our mental well-being?
Oh, that's an important point.
Yeah.
We can't forget that.
While too much social media can make you anxious or depressed,
For sure.
it can also be a source of support and connection,
Especially for people who feel isolated.
or like they don't belong.
There are all these online support groups and communities
Yeah.
for people dealing with mental health challenges.
Like illnesses.
Or just tough times in general.
Those online spaces can be so important
A real lifeline.
for people who might feel alone.
They can connect with others who get it
Share their experiences.
and find valuable resources and support,
It's like having a 247 support system.
no matter where you are in the world.
So empowering.
It really is.
It's like what the source material was saying about using social media to build connections and community.
That sense of belonging
When used intentionally.
and mindfully.
Social media can be amazing for our well-being.
It's about finding the right balance,
Using it to make our lives better.
not worse.
And that balance is different for everyone.
No one-size-fits-all solution.
What works for one person might not work for another.
The key is to know yourself
That's set healthy boundaries.
and use social media in a way that supports you.
I think one of the biggest challenges with social media is dealing with the constant flood of information and opinions.
It's a lot to process.
It can be so overwhelming, especially trying to figure out what's true and what's not.
It's exhausting.
And that's where the source material's emphasis on evidence comes in.
Oh, right. Supporting your opinions with concrete examples.
We can't just take everything at face value.
Especially online.
We have to question,
Evaluate.
seek out different perspectives.
Be critical thinkers.
It's like being a detective.
Gathering evidence before you jump to conclusions.
And that's such an important skill these days.
Essential, really.
So how do we become more discerning with all this information?
Well, first, always check the source.
Who's behind it?
Is it a reputable news organization?
A credible expert?
Or some random person with an agenda?
Look for signs of bias.
Does the source have a particular viewpoint that might be skewing things?
And don't just rely on one source.
Cross-check information.
Get a more balanced perspective.
Also, watch out for emotional manipulation.
Oh yeah, those headlines designed to make you angry or scared.
Misinformation thrives on that stuff.
So be skeptical,
Don't believe everything you read.
question assumptions, Consider alternatives.
Be open to changing your mind if new evidence comes up.
Those are all great tips.
For navigating this crazy online world
And making informed decisions.
about what to believe.
And what to share.
It's crucial, especially as social media keeps evolving and becomes more and more intertwined with our lives.
Something we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
That idea of social media being a double-edged sword.
Connecting and isolating at the same time.
I'm curious, how has it affected our sense of community?
That's a great question.
On one hand, it's built this sense of global community.
No doubt about it.
We can connect with people all over the world.
Share experiences, have conversations that go beyond borders.
Like the Arab Spring uprisings.
Powerful example.
Social media played a huge role in those.
Mobilizing protests, amplifying voices.
It's amazing how it can connect people with shared interests and values.
No matter where they live.
Like a virtual town square.
For discussing issues, sharing ideas, supporting each other.
But then there's that flip side.
The potential for isolation.
Like, the more we curate our online selves, the less authentic we become.
Both online and offline.
It's a valid concern. That pressure to present a perfect image.
It can make you feel inadequate.
Like you're not good enough.
We're constantly comparing ourselves.
The other people's highlight reel.
Forgetting that it's just a snapshot.
Not the whole picture.
And that disconnect between the online and offline world.
It can lead to loneliness.
It's like we're chasing validation.
Through likes and comments.
But real connection comes from deeper interactions.
Well, how do we find that balance?
How do we use social media to connect genuinely?
Without falling into those traps.
I think it starts with being aware of why we're using it.
What are our intentions?
Are we looking for real connection?
Or just validation?
Or building relationships?
Or just comparing ourselves to others?
It's about being intentional, focusing on authenticity.
Not just likes and followers.
Having real conversations, sharing our true selves.
Being present in our interactions.
Both online and offline.
Building relationships, not just a following.
That's where the true power of social media lies.
Connecting with people around the world.
Fostering empathy and understanding.
Creating a sense of global community.
But we have to use it wisely.
Responsibly.
You know, we focused a lot on individual impacts.
Yeah.
But what about the bigger picture?
Social media's impact on society as a whole.
How has it affected politics and social movements?
That's a big one.
It's definitely complicated.
On the one hand, it's made political discussion more democratic.
Given a voice to the silenced.
Allowed information to spread quickly. Facilitated grassroots organizing.
Think about the hashtag #MeToo movement.
Incredible example.
Gained so much momentum through social media.
Empowering survivors. Demanding accountability.
What's amazing how social media can amplify those voices.
Bringing attention to issues that might have been ignored otherwise.
It's a powerful tool for social change.
Connecting people. Organizing protests.
Yeah.
Advocating for causes.
But then there's the other side.
The dark side.
How social media can be used to spread misinformation.
So division.
Even incite violence.
The rise of online hate speech.
The amplification of extremist ideologies is scary.
Those algorithms that drive social media.
They can create echo chambers.
Where we only see what confirms our biases.
Leading to polarization.
People digging in their heels, refusing to listen to other viewpoints. It's like we're living in parallel universes.
Everyone's shouting, no one listening.
That's a dangerous trend.
Social media could be a bridge.
Connecting people.
But it can also widen the gap.
Making things worse.
So how do we navigate this?
How do we use social media for good?
While minimizing the harm.
I think it starts with recognizing our own biases.
Seeking out different perspectives.
Engaging in respectful dialogue.
Even when we disagree.
Social media is just a tool.
Like a hammer.
It can build a house.
Or break a window.
The power is in our hands.
We can use it to connect, inform, inspire.
Build a better world.
Or we can use it to divide, mislead, tear each other down.
The choice is ours.
A powerful reminder.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Especially as social media becomes more and more a part of our lives.
It's up to us to shape its future.
To use it for good.
To create a digital world that reflects our values.
I love that thought.
That's a great place to transition, I think.
Oh, what?
To looking at specific examples of how people are using social media to make a positive difference in the world.
I'm all for that.
There are some truly inspiring stories out there.
As we've been talking about all these different aspects of social media, I keep coming back to this idea of individual empowerment.
It's a thread that runs through all the source material, even though it's meant for an exam.
Yeah, it's like they're subtly encouraging test takers to think about their own role in this digital world.
Not just describing social media, but like analyzing how they use it themselves.
Exactly.
One example that stood out to me was about using LinkedIn for professional networking.
Oh, yeah, staying up to date on industry news, even finding jobs?
It's like taking charge of your career, building your professional identity online.
Definitely. And connecting with opportunities that might not have been there otherwise.
And that sense of agency goes beyond just work.
Absolutely.
Social media has also given people the power to create content, build their own brands, share their voices with the world.
It's like the old gatekeepers of media are being challenged.
Right? Anyone with a smartphone and an internet connection.
A surge in creativity, innovation, diverse perspective.
Like a digital renaissance.
It's a game changer.
But with great power comes great responsibility, as they say.
So true.
How do we make sure this empowerment is used for good?
That's the big question, isn't it?
I think it comes down to education.
Definitely critical thinking, too.
And a commitment to ethical behavior online.
Couldn't agree more.
Teaching people how to navigate this digital world, how to tell fact from fiction.
And how to use their platforms responsibly.
It's also about building a culture online where people are kind and respectful.
Where different opinions are welcome and people can have real conversations.
That's the ideal.
It's a big goal, but I think it's possible.
The source material, in its own way, kind of points to that possibility.
How so?
By making test takers think critically about social media, analyze its impact.
Articulate their own views.
It's setting the stage for people to be more informed and empowered online.
It's a good foundation.
So we've talked about how social media is changing how we communicate, both for better and for worse.
We've explored the pros and cons, the risks and rewards.
The potential for connection and division, for good and for bad.
We've seen how it's reshaping our personal lives, our professional lives, even our sense of community and identity.
And it all boils down to this.
Yeah.
Social media is a tool.
Like any tool, it depends on the person using it.
We have to be mindful of its power, be aware of its limitations, and use it in a way that aligns with our values.
The future of social media really is in our hands.
And that's what I hope our listeners take away from this deep dive.
That they feel empowered to shape that future.
To use social media for good, to connect with others, to make a positive difference in the world.
Well said. It's been a fascinating conversation.
It really has. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of social media.
Keep those conversations going.
Think critically, be mindful.
And use your voice to make the digital world a better place.